The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Yesterday, I wasn't really paying attention to the news in the afternoon. I was just working on different stuff for the show, and I went over to my gym, and on every TV, they had news reports live from Paris, where the Notre Dame Cathedral was on fire. And the latest news is that there are still some risks of the structure being compromised, but that the fire in and of itself has been put out. It appears as though this is related not to any kind of foul play, as was implied by some American right-wingers yesterday in the immediate aftermath, but some kind of a structural, possibly construction work or electrical related incident. And it is now out. The primary spire of the Notre Dame Cathedral collapsed. And it's just very depressing. And I don't even really care, Pat, about Notre Dame as a religious building. I care about it as a historical building and as a cultural building and as a sort of icon of Paris. I visited it multiple times. I was going to be back in the area in about a month and was hoping to at least walk by. And it's going to be a very, very different thing now. And I'm guessing you've also visited it on your trips to France.
Yeah, I think I was there this time last year, almost to the day. So this kind of hit me hard. I was really depressed when I saw this story going on, when you could see the live video feed of the fire engulfing the structure. And luckily, I mean, the structure itself is sound, but it's going to take a long time to rebuild. And you just can't rebuild it in the same way. Like part of the structure that was damaged was built like almost 1,000 years ago. The interior wooden frame, many of those trees go back to like the year 1100. It's just not going to be the same. And it's surprising, too, that it took until now for that to be destroyed in a fire. Like, I'm surprised it didn't happen at some point over the last 1,000 years. You'd think it would be more likely to happen back then than now, given how we're much better at putting out fires now.
You would, yeah. And there were a lot of people who were all of a sudden amateur professional firefighters on Twitter saying, why aren't they coming over the thing with some kind of aerial support? And even Donald Trump, I think, mentioned that. And then, of course, actual firefighting experts explained that you just can't do that given the circumstances, and that, I don't remember the explanations, but basically Trump's not a firefighter and he doesn't know what he's talking about. One thing I want to address is that $675 million has already been pledged to rebuild the cathedral, which is absolutely lovely. But there are amounts of money being pledged to rebuild a building which is historically important. It's religiously important to people who are religious, and it's culturally important to France. But $675 million could do so much good for so many people. Tim Cook from Apple, known to some people as Tim Apple, of course, said that Apple is going to be donating to the rebuilding effort. A French billionaire, Francois-Henri Pinault, pledged $113 million. It's all great, Pat, but the fact that there are people with hundreds of millions of dollars just hanging around until they find something they want to donate it to, the amount of good that could have been done for so many people with these amounts of money, that part does depress me a little bit. Although, of course, I'm glad that the Notre Dame is going to be repaired.
Yeah, it almost sounds like too much money. With that amount of money, they could make it a totally modern building. Like, they could install solar panels. I don't think that's what they're going for, though. And I kind of understand why people were inclined to donate. Like, this story hit me hard in particular. Maybe it's because I had just been there last year. Maybe it's because, it's a very, very old building, and I like that sort of stuff. But, when you hear something go on in the news about, like, many people killed in a natural disaster or mass shooting, like, that hits me hard, too. But for whatever reason, this did just as much, and no one died in this calamity. So I can understand people donating right away.
Yeah, there's this thing about if you throw $113 million, to take the amount that this French billionaire is donating, if you throw that at solving world hunger, you reduce by some significant number the number of people that are starving. But there's still millions and millions of people starving, so it sort of feels like there's less of a coherent beginning, middle, and end. Whereas with Notre Dame, it's damaged. Here's money. We fix it. We've accomplished it. We've done it. We fixed it. And I think that unfortunately, influences charitable contribution decisions in a way that probably ends up not helping the greatest number of people. But I think a lot of people react the way that you're describing reacting, Pat. And I guess it's just something that we have to understand is a psychological phenomena when it comes to charitable giving, and deal with it as best we can. But when I see those numbers being thrown around, believe me, this is an amazing building. It's of such significance. But do you need 675 million to fix it? And if you don't, would part of those pledges maybe be redirected to helping the homeless people of France, people who are not having enough money to feed their kids, disease curing research? I mean, whatever, right? Cleaning air, cleaning water. Probably not, unfortunately. But that is not a new dynamic in the world of charitable giving. Let's talk a little bit about taxes. Less than 1 in 5 registered voters say that they paid less in taxes during the 2018 tax year, which is the first full year of Donald Trump's tax plan. This is according to a new Hill Harris X poll released yesterday. 18% of respondents say they're paying less in federal taxes in 2018 compared to 2017. A majority say their tax bill was about the same or higher. 32% say their federal taxes went up under Trump's tax law. 36% say they owe about the same amount. 14% say that they are not sure. I genuinely don't know, Pat, if people are basing this on the basis of their return or on the basis of their actual effective tax rate. We've talked before, if you have less money withheld during the year, you could end up with a smaller refund, but the same effective tax rate as in a previous year. And a lot of people simply don't understand that. So I genuinely don't know if we can trust these numbers beyond this is what people believe is going on, but it may not actually be representative of the change in their total tax liability.
Yeah, I don't think that this number is all that valuable, just what people think they're paying in taxes. I'd much rather see data come from the IRS, because I think that would give us a better standing of what people are actually paying this year compared to last. But I am surprised, though, that it's not something like we're seeing 18% saying that they paid less under Trump's tax plan. I'm surprised that's not more like 45, 50%, because about half the population, unfortunately, in the U.S. approves of Trump. And you'd think that those independents and right-wingers who like Trump would be inclined to say, yes, I am paying less in taxes under him. Whereas the Democrats would, of course, say no, and maybe that would balance out. But we're not seeing that balance. We're seeing 18%.
Well, we are seeing, though, that we not by those numbers, but we are seeing that Democrats believe they paid more in taxes to a significantly greater degree than independents and Republicans. Republicans are saying that they paid more in taxes way less frequently than independents and Democrats. Now, it may actually be that Republicans got more of a tax cut than Democrats, but it doesn't actually seem to be borne out by the independent think tank analyses. So there is some element of the response that is political. And you're completely right, Pat. It would be good to actually get the data from the IRS about how effective tax rates changed, because clearly even people's opinions about whether they're paying more or less in taxes is completely politically biased. And the one analysis I saw so far says that 90% of Americans got no more than a 2% reduction in their taxes. And of course, that can include increases as well. 10% of Americans had a reduction in their taxes of more than 2%, which is a relatively small amount, not insignificant for them, but it is a pretty small portion of Americans.
Yeah, and I wonder if, knowing what we know now, if this tax plan would have been able to been passed, a little over a year ago? And I think it actually would be, because at the time it was being debated, the tax plan was still wildly unpopular. People understood that most of the benefits went to the top 1%, and then they would get maybe peanuts. That seems to have borne out, and I don't think it really would make a difference, though, because I think the representatives do what's best for their donors, not necessarily their constituents. And I don't think this would have affected anything if we could go back in a time machine.
I tend to agree. I don't think it would have made much of a difference. And we will hopefully at some point get an actual analysis or data from the IRS or some nonpartisan think tank that has access to the information that will tell us exactly how did different income groups' tax liability change. There's a nonprofit group in Philadelphia that's fighting in court to be allowed to open the first facility in the country for people to use illegal opioids under medical supervision. The group's called Safe House. They have the backing of the local government in Philadelphia, but there's a big a legal challenge from federal prosecutors. And the idea of these supervised injection sites is harm reduction. You offer people a space where they can use drugs under supervision of trained medical staff. If overdoses take place, medical staff is immediately there with overdose reversal drugs like naloxone. These sites have clean needles rather than risking people using dirty needles. They have other supplies. They don't provide drugs. People do have to bring their own drugs. And after people have finished taking drugs, staff can talk to them about getting treatment, getting counseling, getting housing, and other social services. Increasingly, it's pretty uncontroversial that harm reduction is a better path than criminalization or other ways that we've seen governments deal with addiction. The idea here that I guess is turning some people off, Pat, is the idea that it's not just a needle exchange. It's not just giving people naloxone without an insurance copay to carry around so that they can help people who may be overdosing, that it almost feels to some people as a sanctioning in some way of the actual drug use. And if you understand anything about harm reduction, you realize that's not what it is.
Yeah, I mean, like, ultimately what I care about is seeing fewer overdoses, fewer people addicted, people being safe. So even if you want to sort of brand it as a crack house or whatever they're trying to brand it as, that's not important to me. I just want to see harm reduction. That takes priority in my eyes.
It does, no question about it. And there is a argument being made that this supervised injection site is an exercise of the religious beliefs of the board of directors of the organization, and that as religious individuals, the people who run Safe House and want to open this location hold as their core tenets, because of their religion, the desire to preserve life, provide shelter to neighbors, and minister to those most in need of physical and spiritual care. And they are making the argument that this is a religious act, and it would be so fascinating if on religious grounds this supervised injection location is allowed to open. It's not really a reversal of what religious freedom typically means. It's just that you don't usually see religious freedom applied to opening a safe injection site. It's applied to many other things, but not that. And legal experts are sort of divided as to whether it will fly or it will not fly. Remains to be seen. But what we do know is that countries that understand that you need to deal with drug addiction as health issues, not as criminal issues, most of those countries are in Europe, at least prominently, that we have data from, have seen these safe injection sites, safe drug use places, reduce harm, reduce overdose deaths, reduce criminality surrounding drug use. And the data is very, very clear. The data is intuitively sort of evident. And it's also borne out by the studies that we have. So hopefully this happens. I don't care what justification you use. Use the religious freedom justification. Use the public health justification. Use whatever works to get it open, because we know that these locations do a lot of good. If you're against such a location, such a safe injection site, I want to hear from you. Let me know why and what you would propose we do to reduce harm from opiate drug addiction. That's it for today. New show, new bonus show tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.